Good morning, everyone. This is a little early for me. But yeah, hi, I'm Gail with Albuquerque Sane, and I hope that you all will please take this opportunity to ask me questions if you have them. I have content, I can speak the whole time, but I really love interaction, and I love that they've asked for people to have the videos on. So I hope you haven't seen me too many times or gotten tired of me, but I will be presenting. I guess I'll start my, I'm still weird on Zoom. I so prefer being in the room with y'all, but like I said, please ask any questions and put it in the chat and they will be sure to get to me. Let me share my screen. Is that the right one?
Yes, yes.
You can see my my PowerPoint?
Perfect.
And does it move?
Yes.
Excellent. I've had it where I'm moving along talking and everybody's like, your PowerPoint hasn't advanced in in 5 minutes.
We've all been there, Gail.
Sounds good. So yes, I'm going to be talking about taking care of a patient. And I know we are kind of focusing on the pediatrics today, the adolescents. So get this, I see it better now. Okay, so again, my name is Gail. I do have a bachelor in psychology and I have been a nurse for, oh God, 18 years now. And then I also got a master's in criminal justice administration in forensics because I had paid off my student loans and I needed more apparently. And then I'm also certified SANE. So those are specialized in our field. No conflict of interest. I speak about this topic to anyone that I can get to stop long enough to hear me. I do speak very plainly, very straightforwardly about difficult topics. I have been working in this field for 15 years now, and no one believes that I used to be an incredibly shy adolescent. I was very shy as a young person, and the fact that I can speak very plainly about these topics is actually kind of shocking. No one believes me anymore. But I will talk about domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, all of those things. And I do recognize that this will impact people. Domestic violence, sexual assault pretty much affects all of us. Even if you don't know that you have a loved one, a family member who's been victimized by domestic violence within the family or not, people don't share that information. And part of what my goal is with domestic violence, SANE, we work with both domestic violence and sexual assault, all ages. And we want people to be able to share their stories, share their truth, and understand the shame should never be on them, but on the perpetrator who has harmed them. And by speaking, maybe we can culturally end some of the allowed abuse that happens. You all work in the field of education of some sort with adolescents, whether you be medical or social workers or counselors and stuff like that. Is that true? So one of the things that is known is when a educator brings in someone to talk about healthy bodies, healthy boundaries to children, that's when kids disclose to their teachers and to their their counselors and stuff. So talking about it can only help end the rape myths that are in people's heads and blame and shame. So yes, I apologize if you need to turn off your camera and step away. We absolutely understand. I definitely want to talk about what sexual assault is, and I will go very carefully over the reporting requirements so that you can understand what is mandatory reporting. And I am speaking about the state of New Mexico. I saw that somebody's from Washington, D.C. You do have a different laws there, but I will definitely be going over New Mexico laws. Please, understanding the need for support. I have some ways to talk to people, and I will be asking for people to unmute and chime in free form when I ask some questions. Definitely understanding that a safe space for someone to disclose, and if you need to write it down for documentation to help that person in the future, then we really engage in follow-up care and what kind of follow-up care and resources are out there for them. So SANE, hopefully everybody knows what SANE stands for. It is a international designation. It was the first SANE, I believe, was in 1976. Memphis, Tennessee started. We got that acronym. They realized that sexual assault was something that should be handled by nurses rather than physicians in an ER. So Albuquerque SANE, and I'll show you our facility. We are not located in a hospital, and that's one of the important things for people to know, that we are a nonprofit, and we are very dedicated to the medical care of a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence. So what is a SANE exam? And people will talk about a SANE exam as if it's a specific thing. There can be some confusion even in the people who work in this field, but we do a medical exam. The full SANE exam is what people consider when someone's been sexually assaulted. They think about the rape kit, and we actually call it the sexual assault evidence kit, and I'll go over the definition in a minute. But sexual assault evidence kit, we are able to collect that within a 5-day window for 13 and up, and 12 and under is a 3-day window. And that's where we examine the body and collect that DNA evidence with the patient's permission. Now, for little kids, they don't have as much say in the but we're not going to harm a child. We're not going to harm a person. They have the ability to consent. Okay, so we work very much on a consent basis, and that's one of the reasons why nurses do this work, because we take the time, we explain what we're doing, and we work as from a consent model. We're supposed to in the medical field always. So that's what we're taught. We also see victims of intimate partner violence, also known as domestic violence. We will use the term DV or IPV kind of interchangeably. Domestic violence often will refer to people who are cohabitating, living together, have an established relationship, where IPV is larger. It can be anyone who's just started dating. It can be a what they call side chick, side dude, affair type of situation. It can be somebody they hooked up with on Tinder, and then things went wrong, and they got stalked with that. So we can see people who have any kind of that intimate partner violent. I can't speak this morning. I did have coffee, I swear. But that dynamic. So all the medical services are with a consent. We will offer medications for emergency pregnancy contraception, if that's applicable, or medications for certain STDs. And the biggest thing that I think we do is educate and tell the patient why they're kind of experiencing the way they're experiencing it. Sexual assault does not look like what they think it will when you think about what a rape victim looks like, and the culture that says a rape looks like this. It's a stranger in an alley and someone should be beaten up and they should have been screaming and crying and they'll be bloody and full of bruises. That's absolutely not the norm, and people have to be educated around that and why their bodies are okay, and then we examine them. We are absolutely free, and we help get them resources to help with pay for other follow-up services. We are hand in hand with Rape Crisis Center. SANE and Rape Crisis are two different nonprofits, but we work very interchangeably, and I call them our advocates. We have magnificent advocates that I'm going to go over a little bit as well. So a little bit on statistics. These statistics kind of come and go. I've seen 1 in 4, I've seen 1 in 3 women will be a victim of rape or sexual assault in their lifetime. And we think it's about 1 in 6 men will be a victim of rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. A lot of those are they say about half of sexual assaults that happen to male identifying people will happen prior to their 16th birthday. So we are talking about children and adolescents that are being harmed. So in 2018, we see a large number, right? We know statistics, there's lies, damn lies in statistics, that how many assaults are happening a year. We've seen that one person every 73 seconds will be assaulted. So statistics will be different. Of course, if we're saying 1 in 3 women, it looks different on what a yearly number is. We also know 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men will be victims of domestic violence or intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And we will definitely see people, we take care of anyone. We are safe zone trained. We do not have a need for female only victims. We see trans, non-binary, however they identify, okay? And we know that we are not getting as many victims as are out there. Our patient load does not reflect the actual numbers of sexual assaults. There's many reasons why people won't come in, but we see more than see law enforcement, but we know we don't see everybody. One of the statistics that I want people to really know is that 75 to 80% know their offender. Okay, the standard that rape was a stranger and they were harmed. So when we think about where sexual assault education comes from, the old ones, the ones that were believed were strangers, and that was the only one that was studied. Research was done on convicted rapists, but the only ones that the police were believing or understanding as sexual assault were stranger rapes. And so our research was harmed due to that because they were only looking at that. Spousal rape was not a thing. I believe we finally passed it in 96 in New Mexico, that a man is not allowed to rape his wife. But as a prosecutor has pointed out, he can poll half of the jury pool and they will still believe that a man can rape their wife, and it not be illegal. So culturally, we still have a problem with that spousal rape issue. And then most assaults are what they call acquaintance rapes. And in the field, you'll hear somebody say it was just a date rape. It was just an acquaintance rape, and there's no just about it. If I could kill a word at times, it would be that just. I'm just a nurse. I will use that term sardonically because I'm proud to be a nurse. I don't want to be a doctor, never wanted to be. I love, love, love my patient care, and I am super passionate about this subject. I can get scary sometimes, but yeah, so there is nothing just about a sexual assault. No one could have had it worse. We never compare people's pain or experiences. So we want to see somebody and support them and let them know that what happened was not their fault. I just did a little stat search on us for the last since 2019. What we see is people think about teenagers being our highest numbers. They could be statistically being assaulted higher. We do, like I said, we're missing a lot of adolescents. Our 13 to 17 is only 14% of our patients for sexual assaults. We suspect this should be higher. Our biggest age range that we see is 18 to 26. When they're out, they call that the red zone at University of New Mexico. Or I think it's a university thing that the incoming freshmen, that first semester, that is the most dangerous time for them, where they're most easily victimized by predators on campus. So then we see it older. We see 0 to 100, however we need to. My youngest patient was 3 months. I had to go to therapy for that one, just so you know. So why nurse examiner? Why did we do these? Why is this a thing? Well, we're great at talking to patients. Typically, a doctor will come in and say, I need 3 large bore IVs and do this, that, and the other. Put a Foley catheter in their urethras and I'll be back and do this thing. So we have to talk to a patient, get them comfortable and establish some rapport so that a patient is willing to give me their arm so I can stab them with a needle. So in a similar way, we are asking about really difficult topics. We're asking about what happened to their body, what happened at one of the worst moments of their life, right? So we're going to relax them. We have time. We have a lot more time than doctors. And in our model at Albuquerque Sane, we have a luxurious amount of time to spend with a patient. We typically give about 2 hours to a patient. That's standard for a SANE exam. And when you think about going to see a physician or seeing a provider, I've been griping about this my last gyne exam. I swear the nurse practitioner gave me 7.5 minutes, and the fastest pap smear I've had in my life. I was like, that was not very compassionate. But we're able to really slow down and take our time and get that patient rapport going and just give them time to relax and get over some of the trauma. We're much cheaper than doctors. So if you imagine a doctor trying to bill for 2 hours of their time, we get paid a case fee. We can spend as long as we want with a patient. I'm the boss. We don't nitpick time. We're not micromanaging our nurses. They found through studies, we have incredibly reliable results from our evidence kits. Nursing, our ability to hold sterile evidence or a clean. Does somebody have, yeah? So the lab really, really loves our kits. They're very, what they call clean. Chain of custody means that we're able to testify. I've opened this kit. I've touched this patient this way. This is what I did with these swabs. Then I was alone. It was locked. I packaged this and then put it into police custody. So I'm able to testify to that in court. Did somebody have a question?
Good morning, Hawks. Today is Thursday, April 21st, 2022. Please rise for the pledge.
I think somebody's at school. Oh, yes, we definitely see any direction. We're non-gender specific. It's less common, but when we see domestic, I see somebody has written, what about the opposite, wife raping her husband? That can happen.
Updates for you. So we have encountered a situation.
So we see male identified victims of sexual assault with domestic violence dynamics. We definitely can see this. This can be incredibly shame producing but I will go over that a little bit more on the gender identities. So I was going to say, we've been wearing cloth masks long before COVID made it cool because of DNA. So we always had our cloth masks for our exams. We didn't want our DNA ending up in those kits. Just so you know, we are not alone with our patient. When we see them, this is an urgent, emergent. It's urgent, not emergent. We have 5 days to see a patient, but then they come to see us when they come to see us. So they call us and we see them within an hour is typically how it happens. We can be there 24 hours a day. But we're a rape crisis advocate. These are hired, trained, full-time advocates, and they accompany us on a case, and they have been fully trained. They used to have volunteers, and they just didn't have the education and the understanding to have 2 educated, passionate about this topic people sitting there and talking to you and supporting you to believe the person. So an advocate is a partner in this fight. And I don't really have it on my slides, but we work on what's called an MDT model. It's a multidisciplinary team, and different members of the team, advocates, have been there pushing for new laws, pushing for victims' rights, and pushing the police to behave better towards a victim. And now they are, and it's been effective. There's now advocates in the police departments and in the DA's offices. So their role is very much to advocate for a patient. Nurses are sometimes called an advocate, but we're a patient advocate for care. This is an advocate. They will be with the patient. They're going to support them, believe them. They cannot now, in their role as a nonprofit advocate, they can't be subpoenaed to go into court. Ria, I see your question. I will go over the laws. It's against the law to rape your spouse either direction. But yeah, so the role of the advocate is to be on that survivor side. They call them survivors. I call them patients because I'm medical. I hate the word victim. I hate it, but they have been victimized by an offender. So they are there. And if a patient wants to tell the advocate something that they don't want to have end up in my medical chart, absolutely. The only thing that they're mandatory to report is harm to a child, or the idea that they're going to go kill themselves or someone else. Okay, so that's the barrier for the advocate. Otherwise, they can hear them, and they're just so supportive, and they're there to help distract them when we're doing our genital exam. And we both provide education. It's really amazing. Sometimes they're there making the mac and cheese or the ramen noodles with us and helping pick out clothing. We're there. And if a patient is super quiet, they're like still in trauma, they're not ready to talk, we'll feed them, start talking, and then maybe we're going to chitter chat in front of them until they start chiming in. It makes it very social and helps ease some of that awkwardness. They also keep that survivor present while the exam is taking place. We don't want them closing their eyes and thinking about what they just went through when we're doing that physical exam. So what is our provider as a responsibility as a medical provider? And this is for all medical people on here. A nurse is a medical provider, even if they're not quote, a provider. So you're to establish trust, provide a place for help and healing, quietness, understanding, listening, care and compassion in this moment sometimes are all a patient needs. We do not require a patient to report to police, and they will do a full exam, full with the DNA collection, because they're invested in the care that's happening to them. I've had patients remember me for a long time for our nurses, and I have nurses who want to do this work. I have a team of about 18 nurses now, and they want to do this work. This is not work that they have to do. This is a second job for like a side job for people. And one of my nurses that moved, and she's not doing SANE anymore, and she says, I don't have that in my life anymore, and I miss it, having that job that means something to me. This job really means a lot to people. So they love taking care of people on their worst day. And it's not because we're sadists, it's because we feel we're actually making a difference to help them at this really hard time. And we don't get that in the hospital sometimes. We feel pretty frustrated sometimes by the healthcare system, but we feel like we're really able to touch somebody that needs it at the time. So what we absolutely need to do is not report against the patient's will. And I'm going to go over what our laws say. And if you have to report you have to call law enforcement, you are going to be patient-centered. You are going to be victim-centered, your client, because you have to support them, not judge them, and explain why this is important. If you have to call law enforcement, if you're at a school, please don't call the cops to the school. Please give that patient some security, some privacy. If the law enforcement shows up to the counselor's office or the school nurse, and there's no privacy in a school, people talk, there's a lot of gossip, and that can really harm the young person. So you can absolutely call us. We can have the law enforcement engaged. It just doesn't have to be on school grounds, so we can try to retain the privacy. And you are absolutely going to tell that person why you need to call them. If there's no buy-in from that teenager or that child, they will not talk. And if they do not talk, there's no case. And we all know how fun teenagers can be. I have one, one is now turning 21. But working with them, I love taking care of the teens, but you have to let them know that they have the ability to say yes or no, and give them a little bit of what we call power and control back over the situation. We talk about sexual assault, domestic violence is a crime of power and control. The offender wants that power and control over another person. And we need to support them and let them know that this is not okay, but how we can keep them safe. And one of the things about medical is safety is a huge part of medical. We want to make sure that that person's safe going home. We want to make sure that that person is safe at school as well. So MAU established sovereign nations. We work with all the nations. We have there are some laws that are slightly different with the BIA and tribal vicinities, but we will see anyone. There are a little bit, but there is a statutory rape law that's a little different, Jonathan, but I can go over that in just a sec. Okay, so retain your role as a medical provider, safety first. Letting them talk to you and having an outlet might be the first thing they need. Somebody to hear them, support them, and then they can tell you more. So the definitions of sexual assault. Why did we go from rape to sexual assault? Rape was literally, the definition of rape was forcible rape, the forcible penis and vagina without consent. Forcible. It had to be, they had to prove force, and it had to involve a penis and a vagina. So you can see that that was absolutely too narrow of a situation. They saw that this was not happening. They had a big court case that lots of evidence where the assault was a man on a woman, but it was anal. And even though the jury knew he was absolutely guilty, they could not find him guilty of rape because the definition. Words are very important in the legal system. And so they, the FBI made a new definition. It is any penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina, the vulva, actually, the inner lips. So the labia minora or anus, any of with a body part or object, oral penetration of a sex organ. So yes, hand on a penis is sexual assault. Exactly. And it can be a dildo, it can be a spatula, right? So any object for penetration. And one of the things that we see, that's a great question, Liza. I will, Liza, I will get there, definitely. I love that you guys are thinking, this is really good, but I get distracted. So definitely sexual assault. And one of the biggest things is that the predator likes to penetrate with their fingers. So like Cuba Gooding Jr. was just found, he took a plea. He would just, a person he's dancing with at a party, find his way through their clothes and put his finger up the vagina. And that's it. Because it's a power move. It does not depend on a penis. It doesn't depend on anyone's actual sexual gratification. And this is definitely not about the need for sexual release. This is about power and control. Child sexual penetration. So in New Mexico, child is 12 and under. 13 and up is considered kind of, they can consent to a person who's young as well, but that's kind of a weird one. But child is under 13. And then the minor actual rubbing of the genitalia. So we need to see contact, skin to skin contact. We can't do over the clothes. They will get care, they will get CYFD, but they won't necessarily be the penetration, okay? So person of authority, we're going to talk person of authority. This is really important when it comes to adolescents. So child is 12 and under. Any sexual activity with a child is absolutely illegal. 13 and up to 13 to 17, if the person is a person of authority, that is a position occupied by a parent, relative, household member, teacher, a priest, employer. They have undue influence over a child. Statutory rape is specific state-specific laws. So it's a New Mexico considers statutory rape. The age difference, so that's where you'll see what supposedly is consensual sex happening between two people, but one person is much older and holds that power and control dynamic. So a 15-year-old with a 25-year-old is statutory rape. The 15-year-old can say, nope, it's consensual. We're going to want to give them care. We're going to want to make sure they have birth control. And we are also going to understand that there's a big dynamic, but that's called statutory rape, where the person is saying, no, I consented to this. In the court of law, I say words are very important, and there's this term that a defense attorney will use, and they'll say non-consensual sex. And I refuse to say it. I said, that you mean sexual assault. It is. They will try to lessen the gravity of what we're talking about. So mandatory reporting. Now I am talking about state law. If your specific facility has a policy that says you need to report it, I would be questioning it, but try to maintain your focus on the patient, the victim, your client, the child in front of you. Okay. So if you suspect it, you can report it to CYFD. If you suspect it. And under COVID, if we have any teachers in here or nurses who work in the schools, we know children went missing. Children stopped checking in. My own child barely kept on the Zoom interactions. Child abuse fatalities doubled under COVID. I'm sure you guys have heard this. So you all are so important. Anybody interacting with a child outside of their family is very important. You can report, and you can do it anonymous if you are suspecting something, but you don't have a lot to go on, like you don't want to, but you can, if you suspect something's going on with that child and you want like a wellness check. But for sexual assault itself, if a child on child, it is not a mandatory reporting. We are New Mexico is the most non-reporting state for sexual assault, the most. We are the Wild West. It is absolutely true. California has mandatory reporting for sexual assault for all ages. All ages. If a medical provider is told that this person's coming to see them for follow-up from a sexual assault, they are supposed to report it to the police. That stops people from getting care. there's studies being done that support not mandatory reporting, at least for adults. And then with teenagers, it's more tricky, but definitely for adults, you do not want to force that. Now, SANE nurses in California do a kind of workaround to try and not to provide privacy so that they can give services without the police. Why do people not want the police involved? I'll go over that really specifically, okay? But so in New Mexico, if the person is one in authority and the person is under 18, then it is mandatory. So otherwise, only report if the patient requests help to do that. And there's a few ways to do it. I know you're different in New Mexico. There are 11 SANE programs in New Mexico. We're getting a 12th here soon, but Carlsbad has a nurse. There's Los Cruces, Taos, Santa Fe. It is hard on the rural programs, but Gallup has one, Farmington, but there is a SANE location near you. We are connected, but Albuquerque SANE is the largest. We do see a lot of patients. We will see anyone wherever they were assaulted. They do not have to be a citizen of New Mexico. They can be on vacation. They could be driving through. We literally had a patient, she was assaulted in Arizona. She's a truck driver. She got assaulted at a truck stop and she kept going because she's a working animal. She was a beast. She was great. She Googled SANE programs, saw Albuquerque was on her route, hooked up with us at 1 a.m, got her exam done, got some food, got comfortable, and then kept trucking. I mean, she was awesome. But it doesn't matter what jurisdiction where, okay? And that's true for any SANE program. We're not to charge. Okay, don't report statutory rape. Now, that is not true on the reservation / Pueblo area. I do believe that the federal law says they're supposed to report statutory rape. The thing is that statutory rape is not well investigated or taken seriously by police or the district attorneys. So that's one of the reasons that we don't report it. If a 15-year-old has a 23-year-old boyfriend, they say this is consensual, quite literally the police will go, right, I don't see any problems here. The parents, if a parent is pushing and very advocating for that for their young one, they might do more investigation, but quite literally these kiddos might slip through the tracks. And that can be a problem when we look at trafficking. Okay, so I can get into that a little bit more. But what's really important is that the medical help that you provide is more important. They need to be able to trust you. If you shut them down and say, oh, you told me about sexual assault, you know, your boyfriend sexually assaulted you, I need to call the police, and you stop listening and call the police, they may not come back to you. The reason, I have a slide for it. Fort Defiance, Gallup, they do go to Gallup. So Jonathan is asking about when it comes to child exams, Fort Defiance has a pediatrician specializing in child sexual abuse, but Gallup does not see pediatrics 12 and under, and they have sent them to us or to Farmington sometimes. And no, we don't travel to sites. Some of the programs do. There's for SANE programs, Clovis and Portales, and there's another place. That SANE program has a facility where people can come, but they will also show up at the hospitals in those different towns. Albuquerque SANE is starting a satellite clinic down in Los Lunas to help with some of the southern area of the state. It is on a website. Ooh, I should have had that. I can absolutely get that for you, Kimberly. Okay. It's called the Coalition to Stop Violence Against. Thank you, Ruth. Absolutely. And yes, all the same programs. And then there's what's called child advocacy centers is also on that. So there'll be child specific centers, and there will be advocates and forensic interviewers and specific people, law enforcement dedicated to helping the children. Okay, and there is one in Carlsbad, Taos. Okay, so they all look a little different, but we all try to support each other. So who are the rapists? Who are out there doing the raping? Now, granted, we say that anybody can be, but which one would we mandatory report? So we've got a 14-year-old and dad, mom. Oh yeah. The highlighted, the little starred ones are the only ones by state law. Okay, I'm not kidding. Foster parents, mom, dad, stepdad, stepmom. Okay, those are mandated by law. Those are the only ones mandated by law. But because of the absolute control dynamics, APD, the law, the attorneys will, the police will absolutely mandatory report these others. A family member who has access to a child, okay, at any age is definitely mandatory report. So we're talking brothers. Now the cousin, how close is that cousin? Is that cousin a state over and we'll never see them again? That one's a little more, maybe we won't if the person's begging us not to. But foster siblings, when we think about, do I need to report this to police? You think safety, safety, safety. Is this child, is this young person at risk for being assaulted again? Okay, so grandparents definitely. And we know in small jurisdictions in rural, but Albuquerque is a clump of rural sections. We've got definitely areas where you know, granddad is behind, you know, they're on the same lot or their cousins are on the same lot. Do they have access? Okay. So we will tell that person, you are at risk and I need to call the police. You cannot keep this quiet. And I think with that adolescent, we know that by empowering them to help make those decisions, you say, I need to keep you safe, the I words, of course. How can you help? How can I help you do this? Let's work on this. And you do need to report. Okay, then the other assailants, would we mandatory report these? Boyfriend, no, we don't. But we can talk to them. And so when we say we're not mandatory reporting, we're not involving the law and the criminal justice system, but we're definitely offering other services, okay? We sometimes have a great difficulty in not reporting some of these cases, right? Catherine's asking, how often is this going on in foster families? It's happening in families. It happens in foster families. It happens. We have to face the hard truth that bad things happen to children in the home that they are living in. And we have to believe them. Strangers whom the parent made them have sex with. Okay, that's trafficking. We saw a huge amount of this under COVID with online sex abuse. So parents were having sex with kids and showing it in a video to have money through the online. This is awful. But yeah, that's absolutely trafficking. And the problem with trafficking is it's very difficult. In all cases of sexual assault, the victim must come forward and say something. If sometimes we'll see a person walking in and seeing the abuse, that is so helpful. Because we can then start the help for the child or the person and give them support and let them know it's not your fault, and maybe they can disclose as well. But that the kid needs to say something. So we have to be able to believe them at the first thing that they say, every 71 seconds, thank you. I was like 73, which is how many seconds. So we have to believe them, we have to support them. And if they, what is true about children and teens, they will start a disclosure and they will test the waters and see how they're responded to. And if they are believed and supported and people are like, hey, not judging, not questioning, but helping, hey, how can I get more information? That will allow them to feel safe to disclose more. Unfortunately, with domestic violence, and I'm going to say the stepdad is abusive to the mom, yes, domestic violence happens the other way around. Domestic violence is the worst ACE score. I think you all know ACE. Domestic violence in the home is the worst ACE score that a child can get. It's worse than sexual assault. The domestic violence in the home is absolutely devastating to a child all through their life. So, but the link between domestic violence in the home and the domestic violence abusers sexually assaulting the children is huge correlation, huge. So we have to, if we hear that there's violence in the home, definitely, help that kiddo. So teacher, priest, would we report that? Yes, we would. Policeman, oh yeah. Coach Sandusky, right? I can't remember the university. That was a huge thing when that coach, he was sexually abusing adolescent boys. He did not identify as gay. This is not a gay thing, but adolescent boys don't get pregnant. So it helps hide their abuse. A fellow student, no, Penn State, thank you. One of the doctors that I worked with at the hospital went to Penn State and he was quite literally devastated. This guy was a hero at that school. Yeah, thank you guys. I love having people put in the chat. A guy that they met at a party. So a 16-year-old met a guy at a party. They sexually assaulted them on the weekend. Are you gonna have them call the police? If they want to, okay, you're gonna let them lead that way. You want them to get resources and get support first. We often say on the chain of events, we wanna be one of the first. For a child, of course, police are involved, but we still wanna be one of the first people called. A stranger, no, we don't mandatory report a stranger. And a friend's parent is the friend being abused. So that's a real tricky one. I had a nurse forget that the girl actually disclosed that her friend had acknowledged that her dad was abusing her as well. So we called CYFD and we let that girl know that we had to report it. So communication is just really important. But when you think about this, you think about safety. We have had a lot of education from trafficked teenagers. They think they know what they're doing. They think that they're on top of things and that they're having sex consensually. They cannot consent to any kind of prostitution. They can't to sex work. They are a child in the eyes of the law. If it is for the benefit of somebody else. And you think of Victoria Martins, and she was an absolute child, but nobody knew this was happening. She didn't know it was happening. She didn't know it was wrong. Okay, so if a kid says something, you support them and believe them. We got a horrific case for 2 girls from a school down south, and it was the counselor. And the counselor asked too many questions as far as how the police and the investigators like to hear it, but they got them safe. And it was horrific what those kids were dealing with. And they have now made a plea and those kids are safe. But it was the counselor at the school or the nurse. They worked together and they said something's going on with these kids. And one little kid said something to the nurse and they got with the counselor and they were able to get them to us. And it's really sad, but they are now with safe people. That one is so bad, I want to cry because it was so bad. So why wouldn't somebody want to report to police? People are like, they must want to report to police. Oh, statute of limitations, Gilda. We're working on making them longer. They'll make me crazy. 7 years, I believe, 7, 8 years for an adult. It's different for children, but it also depends. So in the nursing world, in many worlds, the job, it depends. If you don't know who your offender was, then the statute of limitation doesn't start until they have identified the offender. So why wouldn't you want to report? Why would a teenager not want to report? So they don't want to cause a disruption. They don't want to get anybody into trouble. This is true throughout the age ranges. They don't want to cause a disruption. They don't want to get into trouble. And when we talk about children making disclosures, y'all work with kids. They do not lie to get into trouble. They lie to get out of trouble. I didn't take that cookie. I didn't do that. I did not do that. They don't go and say, oh yeah, I messed up the bathroom when they didn't. They don't want attention of that kind unless they have some kind of attention-seeking disorder for other reasons, right? But rarely do they ever disclose any kind of sexual abuse for when it's not happening. Seth just said, I had the perpetrator become a fugitive, which was devastating to the survivor. Absolutely. Disclosing has definitely been very disruptive to the survivor's life. There is this huge culture in America. I know it's in many other cultures as well. I will get into the roofie, Anna, in a minute, okay? It's a great question. But I just got distracted. They think they're going to be blamed. The cultures tell us to stay silent, that if we're quiet, then no one's going to believe us, and victims are blamed. We very much humans blame victims. We blame victims for many, many, many reasons. We're judgy people. It happens. But if you will look at any news report around a case of a sexual assault disclosure, somebody's going to be blaming someone besides the perpetrator. The mom will be blamed. The parents will be blamed for not keeping the kids safe. What were they doing keeping them out at 2 o'clock in the morning? I mean, they'll do anything other than blame the perpetrator. We also pray that the perpetrator isn't a perpetrator, and that if the kid is lying, then nobody's a perpetrator and we can just get on with life, and the kid's just a liar and we're going to take him to therapy. But if we put shields in front of our eyes and don't acknowledge the abuse, nobody likes child abuse. Nobody wants to talk about child abuse. It is a visceral reaction to some people, but they talk about like this child trafficking ring, like if I go to IKEA, this man can snatch my child. No, that's not where it's happening. Where it's happening is in the home. It's happening at the friends of the parents coming and touching the children. It's happening in the kindergartens. It's happening in the churches. It's happening not in this dramatic where a child is snatched away from a very protective parent. No, it's happening to children who are neglected and abused. Child pornography online, I don't go on specifically. It's absolutely wrong. The thing about online, if you've gotten online footage, it's evidence. We have been asked, we have some child abuse pediatricians and we're specialists with seeing children's genitals. One of the fun tasks, Cece, is that the FBI, the investigators will see some footage of porn that has been put online, and they will ask for us to age identify the child. Is this a child? If you can identify if they're under age 18, then it is child porn. It's absolutely grotesque work for anybody that does that, and they need all the self-care because that is brutal. But yes, child pornography is not a victimless crime. child pornography is one of the easiest crimes to convict for. So a person can be an abuser and get away with stuff, but if they have child porn, they'll get years because it's really difficult to convict these guys. Yes. If you hear of it, definitely report it. Report every count. Right. But so why don't they report? Because it is really difficult to get a conviction for a perpetrator of a sexual assault crime. In New Mexico, we are one of the worst for our legal system and the way we do not protect our children. Okay, I'm not trying to get political, I'm getting real. This has crushed my soul for year after year after year. Because in the state of New Mexico, and I believe you know, we are dead last for child welfare. We're dead last. We're not even close to 49. My goal has been to lift us to 49, but I think we slipped worse. Our child fatalities due to child abuse doubled under COVID in 2020. Right? We have been seeing cases of child torture. I had a case that I saw this child, she was so beautiful. And the mom's telling the story and I just wanted to vomit the entire time. I have a pretty hard gut. I've heard a lot of bad things and I cried for 2 weeks and I'm gonna cry again. These are really hard cases because if the parents aren't hearing them, if the people who are in their lives are not understanding that this is wrong, children don't understand. And the teenagers will think that they're going to be blamed. They're not going to be believed. They're already at odds with their parents who are not abusive, right? And also they were drinking and using drugs. Okay. Daisy, anybody watch that Netflix Daisy and Audrey and Daisy? It is child abuse. Yes, Anna is talking about child porn not being called it porn because it sounds more legitimate. It's definitely where we hate a lot of words. Child prostitution, underage prostitutes, those words, no. Trafficking victims. What is it? God, there's so many terms and they change all the time. So we're always trying to better our game. You are absolutely correct. Children are, Anna. Oh, so Trisha said the child porn legitimizes the act. Absolutely. Like I said, we are trying, and it's a fancy term and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Now I work with Para los Niños, and I have their number. They are the child sexual abuse medical unit, and they have doctors and they're associated with UNM. They're part of UNMH. They treat children who have been a victim of child sex abuse through any means, through whether it was videoed or whatever, and they can take long disclosures. So what happens is we see the children 12 and under within a 3-day period, and then 13 to 17 to 18, we'll send them for a 5-day period. We'll do that initial emergent exam, and then we pass them to Para los Niños, and they will follow delayed disclosure. They'll follow our patients and they will follow them until they're 18 and hopefully get them more stuff. And there are resources. The Attorney General's office and the state work on a trafficking. We're working on a trafficking team, which is really difficult, but yeah. So why doesn't a child, let's talk about why a child doesn't want to report. Or why a teen? They were drinking. So we have this kid, Daisy. She was huge in this Netflix documentary. If anyone saw it, Audrey and Daisy. Anybody see it? Put in the chat. It is absolutely devastating. It is I encourage you all to watch it. Audrey and Daisy. And it is about 2 teenage girls who are sexually assaulted, but it is about the school's response and why you have to preserve their privacy above all else, because the bullying that happens, I don't know if it's just on Netflix. Netflix produced it. So that's why Audrey and Daisy were cases that became famous because they were sexually assaulted as teenagers from school, from fellow students, and the whole school knew. In Daisy's case, the district attorney declined to prosecute the case. The offender was a very popular football player, and he was grandson to a state senator. So they refused to take the case forward. She was bullied. Her entire family was bullied. Her mom tried to leave the town. They burned down the house. I mean, literally, they had the dead rabbit stuff going on their yard. They had death threats, and Daisy tried to kill herself several times. She finally ultimately succeeded. She did just die last year, and I cried. Daisy has done a lot of work in forwarding her narrative and letting her story be told. Audrey did commit suicide because of the amount of bullying that happened at her school. They absolutely did not take the case forward. And she was not supported by the criminal justice system. This is one of the hugest reasons why we do not require them to report. New Mexico is very bad for supporting the victim, but it's hard all over. The way the criminal justice system has been set up, the science has not advanced to understand the way predation happens. And we are going off of 200, 300-year-old laws. You need to have a witness, you need to have evidence, and they only look at the one time, and they don't look at the patterns of abuse, and grooming happens, and victims it's called Audrey and Daisy. Victims have to push their own case forward. Without the victim as a witness, the case goes away. And that can be very hard on a 4-year-old, on a 12-year-old, on a 13-year-old. Okay, thank you. But one of the things is they can drop their case. If they started allowing the police to investigate, they can always drop it all the way through trial. So that's one of the things we're going to tell these youngsters. If a parent drags a child in to get a SANE exam, that child has the right, that person has the right to decline that exam. But why are they there? And maybe they'll do the exam anyway. We do not allow the parents into the exam with us. We are focused on the victim. We are focused on our patient. We are absolutely there. We do give support and resources to the parent, especially for children, but we are there for that child. We are there for that victim, however old they are. They do blame themselves. So like, if they snuck out, Daisy snuck out and they gave her alcohol, she has to say, the parents will hear, you did this, and this is why you were sexually assaulted. If you hadn't done this, then you wouldn't be victimized. So the initial blame comes down on the kid. All right. And we always say, look, we all enjoy an adult beverage. We can't say what we did as teenagers. We are not going to judge you. We're not going to blame you. And the police are not going to get someone into trouble for drinking or using drugs. They will not get arrested for underage drug use or drinking. They will not. If they have a violent felony, they can get into trouble. If they were using drugs, they will not arrest. That is a misdemeanor. They will be going after the felony assault. They have prior experiences. They reported Uncle so-and-so when they were 7 and nothing happened. Uncle so-and-so moved away, nothing happened. No one believed them. We had a 12-year-old get assaulted by their dad. The nurse who saw her, she wrote a little note saying, thank you, you made me feel safe. But the entire family turned against her, said, Dad didn't do this to us. What did you do? What did you do? The mom was upset because Dad lost his good lucrative job. Dad became a fugitive, and this child was sent to live in another state with relatives. Were they punished? Absolutely. Do the parents want to punish them? Is that their intention? No, but this is that's their power and control. So it's really hard. We do a lot of education around parents, and we really try to offer them support. Rape crisis support is absolutely available for parents, and the offender is considered more important than the victim. School bullying is hella bad, hella bad. So it's very scary. That's why we say we can coordinate. If a person is in a school nurse or a school counselor or a teacher's office and says, yes, I was sexually assaulted by this person. Yes, I am interested in the police. Get them to us. The police can come to us then. If you believe it's a mandatory report situation, call CYFD. And they will make sure. So you make a CYFD report, but you're just not going to have them show up at the school. Okay. I have the numbers on there as well. So this is an example in the news. This 18-year-old man, I know he was multiple teenage girls. Between 16 and 17, he was sexually assaulting 15 and 16-year-olds. The judge prayed about it. Yes, he was found guilty. He took a plea. I thought, and the judge prayed about it and said, it won't do him any good to go to jail and to prison. One of the girls, the victims, was vomiting in the bathroom when she heard this. This happens so much more than we ever know. Rape culture is we are founded on the purity. You don't talk about sex. You don't talk about sexual abuse. If you can't talk about healthy sex and consent, how are we supposed to understand what consent is? And when abuse happens, we need to talk about sex and healthy sex and consent, ongoing consent. The parents supplied the alcohol and drugs that were given to the victims. So question, would we mandatory report this case if we heard about it from a victim? So here are some of the issues. The teenager has the right to privacy and can't be forced to talk to the police. The accused is actually wealthy and he assaulted her in his home. He's going to have good access to legal representation. The defense will say it's a he said, she said. He said, she said is absolutely, every case is he said, she said, but they act like, oh, he said it was consensual. We can't prove it. Like she has no say in the matter. And I'm going to say he, she, knowing that the genders can be whatever. We know he on he and all that, she on she, right? But the parents supplied alcohol and drugs. Exactly, coercion is not consent. Alcohol and drugs to the girls and the boy. The word groomed was used. The word groomed was used by the parents. What do we actually see here? I would call that trafficking. The parents set up these girls for the benefit of their children, for this guy. They groomed him, they set it up, and they coerced him. And Jennifer, you said it absolutely. The idea that coercion, they argue it all the time. They don't understand what coercion versus consent is. And this is why we need consent training, consent. He pled guilty and was put on probation. Nice thing is he's still an offender. Now, one of the secrets of the prosecutors is, and they've told me this, is that these are really very difficult cases to get a conviction. Nobody wants to find a nice young person guilty of a crime, even an older person who looks nice to them at the time. Somebody's going to be up there saying, oh, he's a wonderful dad, he's a wonderful friend, he's a wonderful this. They don't want to find them guilty. But if they can put them on probation, 10 years, he's not going to not violate. On probation, you're not allowed to drink, use drugs, associate with criminals. You can't, there's a lot of rules. And they go, I only got 3 years probation, but I know he's going to violate, and then he'll be in prison. So that's their backdoor method of getting somebody of getting the community safe. However, somebody's going to be harmed again, right? This is another case. You can see these cases everywhere. This is every state. You can get really quite suicidal or homicidal when reading these. This was a school bus driver. He raped a 14-year-old. And they only call it a third degree felony. That's not very high. Sentenced to 10 years probation. Would we mandatory report this case? Would we mandatory it? What do you guys think? Somebody want to unmute and sing out?
Yes. We
Yes.
call the police because it's not a parent, so we cannot call CYFD, so we'll have to call the police and report it. We can't. That's how people get in trouble. I feel sometimes that they think, oh, it's not a parent, what can we do? Well, you call the police.
Yes, absolutely. And I would urge you to send her to us and the police show up at our place.
That's
Interesting statistics wise, but thank you, Cece. Thank you. You are absolutely correct. It is absolutely mild. Now, CYFD is supposed to refer those cases to the police. If they got called, they're supposed to refer them. It's not a perfect system, but they're supposed to say, oh, it's not our area, but definitely the police will still be triaged. In fact, the police should be called immediately and they triage. But we, what was I going to say? So we definitely want to see them, but the transport, the bus driver, the transport van rider, the transport drivers at a prison, at a jail, at a daycare, those are the highest. That's where that has a high percentage of offenders in that specific type of job. They have access, short time, and no responsibility other than that little time. That was a really weird statistics. Position of authority, yes, good. Registering as a sex offender. Somebody asked about that. Okay, so that is case by case basis, and that is one of the tools that a prosecutor will use to get jail time, prison time, and they do a bargaining chip. A person, an offender, will do almost anything to not be labeled as a sex offender. So they will do many things. I'll capitulate to this. And same with domestic violence offender. Plead it down to a simple battery so that they're not registered as a DV offender because they lose their guns. A sex offender has to register and do all these things. They will do anything. And so they might take a plea to 2 years if they don't have to be a sex offender. So the answer is maybe, maybe. Yeah, it's terrible. We see everyone who's a victim of a sexual assault, and we do, it's called PRIA. Catherine is asking about jails and prisons. Do we see people who've been assaulted? Absolutely. And I did take care of a person who was assaulted by the transport guard and had to go to, I testified 3 times for this guy. He did finally get he did get convicted. Interesting thing is after he was in prison, his father was convicted for sexually assaulting his children. So this is generational. This is in the family. And so the one guy his father was sexually assaulting his children. Was he sexually assaulted by his own father? Probably. So sexual assault, we talk about power and control and opportunity. Most offenders have access to consensual sex. It's that power. They want that feeling that they get, that rush that they can get. Cece just posted something about kids in power. That I've never heard of them. I am loving all the new stuff that's coming out. I feel like this young generation is talking about consent. They are talking about sex assault. They're talking about their bodies better than our generation did. I'm a Gen X, or I don't even know anymore. So what do we know about offenders? when we do an exam, and I want you guys to know that we will see both sides. We are the examiners, we're not the investigators. If two people are saying this, I'm the victim, and this other person's like, no, I'm the victim. We have enough nurses, we have enough advocates, we can see them at different times. We're going to take the evidence and let the law enforcement sort it out, okay? But we do know that most offenders are males. Most men, most males will never rape. What was termed the serial offender was specifically a stranger, hunting and attacking women, and it was assigned this label. But almost all sexual offenders predators are serial. They do it over and over again. So their numbers of assaults are high, but they're a small percentage of men. That isn't great news for us women, or the victims, their desired victims, and because we don't know, it's the poisoned M&M. We're not going to treat all men bad because we know some are predators. Some are predators. They start in middle school, and that's the thing that's really important. They start at adolescence. Now, child on child assaults do happen. That, like a 6-year-old on a 5-year-old. What do we want to do about that? If you hear about a child on child, that is not so much a criminal case as a, whoa, what's going on here? Is this just experimentation? Is this two kids just looking at each other's bodies? Or is one mimicking what was done to them? So we want to definitely hear about those children. We may not necessarily do a SANE exam, but Para los Niños will see both kids. They will see those children, and that, because medically we want to see what's going on in this family, what's going on. But the criminal acts really start at 13 and up. I see there's some questions. Reporting is a great step to take. Reporting with their permission, and when they have to, but definitely reporting a offender. So most start in middle school. Most rapists do it many times before they're of cost. When you think about the what power and control looks like to a female, a woman offender, what kind of power and control is a woman going to have and take advantage of? Anybody have a guess? Cece, I see you.
I want to speak because I cannot type that fast, but it's usually when the person has authority, right? That doesn't change because of gender or identity. It's the authority, and then from people who are females or identify as females, they use more of the grooming, and I'm gonna protect you, and I'm gonna nurture you, and I'm gonna build your self-esteem, and this is all for you, and you're so caring towards me. So it's a different type of grooming I have seen compared to males and self-identifying males.
Absolutely. And teachers, we hear the most convicted female identified offenders tend to be teachers, but mothers, foster mothers. It tends to be that age, definitely coercion, manipulation. And in a DV relationship, they can force their spouse to have sex and to completion, and that can be very shame-inducing for the penis wearer. Sometimes I'll call them the vulva bearer and the penis wearer, right? So they don't tend to look like rapists. They can look like douchebags. I think we all know who this guy is. This is the Stanford rape case. This is Brock Turner. I haven't finished Chanel Miller's book, his victim, who is a fantastic writer. Oh my God, she's an author and artist. She's she's very eloquent with her words. I am not. So I have mad respect to anyone who can write. So Stanford, and she still had hate mail. She still had death threats. And this was an absolute witnessed case. It was convicted and he was sentenced to, does anybody know how long he served in jail or prison? Does anybody know how long he actually stayed behind bars?
Wasn't it like 13 days?
No, it was 3 months. Yeah,
Oh,
Ruth
okay.
got it. 3 months. Yeah, Jennifer. It was shockingly short. He was absolutely convicted. He had 2 witnesses, and I'm going to tell you, if you have witnesses, that is your gold. And they were athletes. They were bicyclists. He was a swimmer, and he was supposed to be on the Olympic swim team. So he was of value, and she was just a woman. No, this is absolutely written. But these 2 young men saw him assaulting her blotto, drunk, inebriated body, and he ran and they caught him. I mean, I'm like, wow. So they helped convict him, but yeah, 3 months. And then that judge ultimately was taken, pushed down, but there are many judges who do this type of thing all the time without this being a high profile, so that they can't get away. And this is California, which is considered pretty progressive in their consent laws. They were the first to start a yes means yes instead of no means no. When you think about words mattering, when we talk about ongoing consent, yes means yes, ongoing consent, rather than no, I have to stop you. I have to tell you no, you're allowed to touch me and I have to refuse your touch. That is a huge expectation on a victim to prove that they said no. What consent, yes means yes, is supposed to do is ask that guy, why do you think you had consent? What was the consent language? What did they do to say it's okay for you to touch my body? It's okay for you to put your hands here. It is a very different dynamic because they will actually use this as an excuse. Well, she was wet when I touched her vagina, so I took that as consent. And we're like, you touched her genitals without permission. News flash, we're always moist down there. I like that word. Sorry, guys. So I like to bring up what's a false report? What do they look like? They're very rare. Okay, they're very rare. They say between 2 and 8% of reports are false. And there's 3 types. These are usually investigated out pretty simply. Lives are not ruined by absolutely credible reports. So, Brock Turner's life is not ruined. He actually took another name and he's working. I can talk to you, Summer. Let me finish this slide and I will address that question because it's a good one. So teenagers, okay, yes, they're trying to get out of trouble. Again, we're trying to get out of trouble. So they're going to say nothing happened, or this person assaulted me. I had a teenager brought in by her sister and she had hickeys on her neck. This is absolutely this type, and this is how they come. Her parents, her sister brought her in. She's so angry and she says, my sister's a virgin. My sister is a study horse. She's got dreams. She's got goals. She doesn't have time for boys, blah, blah, blah. So if she has hickeys on her neck, she must have been raped. And that's exactly what this girl was hearing. And she gave this outrageous tale of strangers with guns and knives, and they kidnapped her and they kept her for all this time and this, that, and the other. And it was absolutely, we knew it was not, the police detective and I were like, this is not. The detective did some studying. She's like, there's no way this could have happened. Let's talk to her. And yes, in fact, she couldn't tell her parents that she was gay, and her girlfriend was really really mad at her for not coming out to her parents, and culturally her parents were not going to accept it. And so her girlfriend gave her hickeys to force her out. Was that an assault? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it was not the story that she said she was. And the police did not charge her with false report. They didn't do anything. They were able to tell the parents a story to mitigate why they're not going forward with that case. But they're trying to get out of trouble. They typically say something, they don't give a name. If they've done something, they snuck out, had some drugs, and were playing hooky. Do they say that word anymore? Hooky with their friends, and they were gone. Maybe they stayed out all night. Oh, I was kidnapped by these 3 guys in masks, and they were out with Al Qaeda. I mean, I've had that story too. And they'll tell a really outrageous tale. So typically it's really easy to find that's not true. Mentally ill people, oh my gosh, they were assaulted, they were sexually assaulted, they're very vulnerable, they could be sexually assaulted again, but they're so floridly psychotic, or they just feel this is happening all the time. They don't, if it's not something that's happened recently, then they think it's somebody. One time it was the devil, another time it was this one person from TV. So they tend to come in and make those statements. And then criminals, people who are making an absolute false statement, and they're setting up a scene, and they're absolute, and they get caught. They do. So one guy was the offender, he was the trafficker, and he submitted to an entire SANE exam, and it was him. And the detective was like, I believed him. And I said, that's where you're supposed to start. And then you investigated and you learned the truth, which was brilliant. Okay. Oh God, I'm running out of time. Okay, I always run out of time. I can talk for forever, I told them. So anyone who needs us can come in. They may be, can I inform parents? The 13 and up, thank you. 13 and up can get our SANE exams without the parents' knowledge or permission. They sign for their own exams, okay? If you can get them to us, if we can figure out a way to get to us, we can take care of them. We've had people help get them to us, and we've sent them back to school. The parents didn't know. Now, typically they will, and they can always, so we do a rape kit. We do that kit, and then they have that time to be able to report later. Remember, they're not all pedophiles. They just are people in their lives. A person who is having sex with a child may not be a pedophile. A true pedophile does not want to hurt the children. So we won't necessarily see any physical injury on children. We don't see physical injury on their bodies. That is absolutely true. We see a lot of cases like this. Was it rape? I don't know if I was raped. I don't want to report because I don't know if I was raped enough, believe that or not. If they were drinking, they were at a party, somebody saw them kissing, but then she didn't want to have sex because, hello, she didn't want to have sex, or he didn't want to have sex. But everybody at that party saw that they were kissing and having a good time. Okay. We know that people are vulnerable to sexual assault. The neglected child, absolutely, will be groomed by other people, intellectually delayed. If they're developmentally delayed, intellectually delayed, if they are nonverbal, they are like child sexual abuse. Okay, they cannot consent to sex. If they are delayed, but we're seeing delayed person on delayed person sometimes in schools, but it's never okay to perpetrate. And we will definitely see them. We've seen a lot of developmentally delayed patients. An abuser can spot them in 2 seconds. One girl, she was like, I couldn't believe, he said hello, I said hello, and in a flash he was in her house and he was assaulting her. He saw her disability from a mile away. So we will definitely work with them. The ARC of New Mexico has a advocate specifically to help them. This is really important. The no is not verbal. People freeze. They do not fight. They do not resist. They do not scream. They will be in a room with other people and they do not say a word. This is gender neutral. Anyone, my largest patient was 6'8", 310 pounds. He was a big boy. And I was like, gosh, you're my biggest. They freeze. They do not respond. It is the fight or flight or freeze. Okay. We have to educate our patients and tell them that this is normal and it's okay that they didn't respond, and that this means that there's no body injury and there might not be any genital injury, but we absolutely know it's not their fault. We know that the effects of trauma can be acute and long-term. PTSD, headaches, anxiety, loss of memory, poor judgment. They will be super studious or they will be risk-taking, and they will be out there and getting trafficked and sleeping with everybody. Strained relationships, anxiety, headaches. 1 in 6 is a really great website for people dealing with male identifying people. They have a lot of resources for people who work with them as well as victims themselves. This is a really great organization, 1 in 6, to help because we know the stigma around it. I never compare traumas, but we have to know. So we don't do hymenal checks. The hymen doesn't always get ripped. Only half have injuries at all if we're examining their genitals within a 3 to 3 day period even. We're very good at seeing them. This is a microscope on a camera. Basically, this is my baby. I love this thing. It goes up to 15 times magnification. So we can focus on an injury, not a genital pic. We don't want to be producing porn, right? Here's our kit. It's just paper, swabs in paper. A little bit of neurobiology are super fast. So when the brain, and this is a burgeoning field, a neurobiology around trauma, sexual assault, as soon as the brain realizes, uh-oh, they're violating my boundary, I'm in danger, the pod bay doors fall, the alarms go off, and that person is in trauma mode and they freeze. Adrenaline, cortisol, oxytocin, and they do not move. Some will fight, but most do not. Most people freeze if it lasts a long time, or they'll fawn. They will do what their offender tells them to do. They are terrified. And I'm not saying this is scary. This is Grand Canyon level fear. This is, I could be killed. This is not, oh, he doesn't mean to hurt me, I just don't want to have sex. No, this is, I could die. And so the memory is absolutely changed because the hippocampus is responsible in the brain for memory encoding, like you're using it right now, I hope. I might have traumatized some of you. But now it's the post brain, which is using it. It's the amygdala, and the amygdala is very sensory based, and they're going to remember things, but they won't remember everything. And I don't know if anybody ever listened to Dr. Ford's testimony around the sexual assault that she endured. Her memory was absolutely consistent with that type of encoding, what she could remember, the smells, the sounds, the sights, but not specifics like who's in the room or what day it was and stuff like that. It's very interesting. People used to think they were lying because she couldn't remember everything, okay, because it didn't make sense. Alcohol makes this worse. Do people drink? Absolutely. Does alcohol make you more vulnerable? The only thing that our patients all have is they were vulnerable. It's not their fault. It's never their fault. This is an example of some physical injury photos that we take. Another picture close up. We take really good. Now nurses take close-up photos. Police cannot touch a person, but nurses can. That's our job. This is a case, a teenager was being stalked by her relationship for 5 years, and then he killed her brutally when she was 18. Nobody understood that stalking, how dangerous this was. So we say if they're being strangled or stalked by their boyfriend, and I'm going to say boyfriend, because I'm talking about homicide. Girls can stalk, girls can abuse, but male bodies kill. They're doing a lot of choking. Be careful. It's not healthy. They can get brain damages and concussions. If somebody's saying, yeah, he's choking me, ask, is that something you'd like to have happen? Is this something you want to do? And if they're saying their partner, their boyfriend, their girlfriend is choking them and it scares them, please help them get there's a whole, I do a 4-hour thing on, I've done an 8-hour thing on strangulation. It's really dangerous. It's really dangerous and it's very abusive, a lot of power and control dynamics. So we see people who've been strangled. What we've learned from research, if you are asking about safety at home, it doesn't harm them. It opens the door. There's no harm in assessing for issues at home, for violence in the home. Ask them, even though it's a hard ask them. It can help them. They will know you're a safe place. We are on call 24/7. If they have to go to the hospital, we will find them. Call us, ask us if you think they need to be seen right away. We give them plan B, free plan B, come for the free plan B, stay for the amazing medical care. Typically, if they come in to see us, they will do the entire thing, even if they're not reporting. If they're under 18, they're supposed to keep the kit until they're 20, okay? I don't know if it always happens, but photos, evidence, we give them TDAP, courtroom testimony, that's our least and worst thing. We have a sofa, we have ramen noodles, we're gonna treat them really nice. We also have a really great exam room. If they want to report, and this is really true, 13 and up, they can talk directly to a sex crimes detective with APD, or BCSO will come to us. Detectives will come and so they don't have to deal with a street officer in a uniform, which can be very scary. These guys are trained up. So it's really a good thing, and they can have an advocate with us. So that's one of the reasons they say call. We can arrange to meet at the unit. They can arrange to meet the police officer, the police detective. If it has to be immediate, we can call and they can come to our office. Make sure you have a safe place to touch it. I know I'm almost out of time. Start by believing, support statements. I care. It's not okay for someone to hurt you. It's never okay for someone to hurt you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I think I need that tattoo. It's not your fault. I say that 15,000 times until the person believes me. Safety. If you're thinking about mandatory report, it is absolutely about safety, but we can help them with a restraining order. Their parents, if they're teenagers, they can get a restraining order against their neighbor and stuff. See, I had questions in case you didn't have any. Denial. If you're not saying they're not wanting to come to us, go ahead and document anything that they said to you. Okay, use quotes. He raped me in the garage. Use cuss words if they have them. If you're calling us, you can call for us. Anybody can call us. You can have them in the room. We like to talk to them. Of course, they can use the bathroom. If it's not oral, they can eat. We do want to know what kind of meds they're on, and we do want to see them. We want to see them. CYFD, yes. If you're reporting on a case that's not parent involvement, they still are supposed to call police. Okay, there's our numbers, and you can get this PowerPoint. It's absolutely free for you to give this out. Okay. Start by believing. Thank you for telling me. Talk about sexual health. Don't act like sex is shameful or that they're ruined for life. Just try to be, and the only risk reduction I give them is have a wingman. Have a wingman. Do they feel better or worse after they see us? They absolutely feel better. Look at the smile on this woman. She's feeling supported and cared. And that's why I've been able to do this for 15 years. Thank you so much. Let me stop the share. Woo! Sorry, I can talk. Anybody have any quick comments before they run me away?
So it looks like someone would like you to repost the contact link.
I gave it to Kesselman Jones. Do you have it, or?
I can forward it in an email. That's fine, of course.
I can, let me, the contact link. Yes, let me, I know. It doesn't matter. how long I have. I do that at the end, I swear to God, for everyone. Rape crisis. I'm going to put all of this, I'm copying and pasting. You
I
guys,
just
thank you.
I just jumped in to make a comment. I'm from northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City. And I just looked up and there are no sane sites in northern New Jersey, only in 5 hospitals in South Jersey. So we don't have, it looks like we don't have anything like this.
That is a problem. And there's, so we are not in a hospital. Hospitals are supposed to have the ability to have a SANE. They're in Albuquerque, they always made everybody go to UNMH to get a SANE exam, a rape kit. It wasn't a SANE exam at the time. When we were formed, then we moved to different locations, and now we are at this fantastic facility. The city gives it to us rent-free, and we have other agencies with us, a family advocacy center. This model is being pushed all throughout the states. New Orleans just opened a huge family justice center housing the SANE unit. I believe it. You can ask a hospital, you could call them and ask them what the SANE services are. We always encourage somebody to Google first, don't just go to an ER. For SANE services. Some SANEs are in a hospital. Holy Cross in Taos is where they go, but some places have facilities. We have an incredible model here. I have an amazing team, and we give the most amazing care. People were like, a child who'd been sexually assaulted many times. She was 17. She'd been sexually assaulted before. She goes, after talking to her for an hour and a half, she goes, "This is what support looks like?" Huh. I was like, huh. Like, so I love my work. We love the kids. We love the people, all ages, and we want to take care of them. We can help you figure out the mandatory if it's an issue, if you have any questions. And oh, let me put my number. I do not mind. I am 24/7 on call. If it's not me, it's somebody else. Okay.
Real quick, Gail, we're gonna put up an attendance poll for the end of the day before anybody leaves.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay, if everybody can take just a couple seconds to answer that poll, make sure you're accounted for.
But put me on your phone and say emergency sexual assault contact questions. You know, if you say, should I send this person to you? How should I start? I don't mind those questions. It's when people feel ashamed to ask. It's the hard. And you can definitely share the PowerPoint. I do not mind. I'm very excited about our satellite in Los Lunas. It'll help some of the southern parts. Beautiful, brand new equipment. Beautiful. It's a lot. I have a lot of information to give, David. It's awful. Yeah. Somebody asked me to present for 10 minutes. And I'm like, I can barely introduce myself in 10 minutes. I see some faces I know here. In appeasing behavior, this is one of the reasons why court is hard. They'll say that they pretended and that the offender didn't realize that they were raping them. The offender knows. The offender knows. They know what coercion is. They know that they're coercing. But one of the rules I give, a person who's abusing is a liar. They're going to lie to people, and they lie to themselves, and so they don't believe that they're a rapist. They never call themselves that, so they're not admitting that they're causing harm. So they will be believed because they think they're being truthful. Okay, I think I'm getting kicked out. Thank you all.